those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and if you haven't noticed, it's pretty empty in here. Drew is a little bit under the weather. He is down for the count with the stomach bug, so it's just going to be you and me tonight, so I'm going to be leaning on you guys a little bit more in the comments here tonight as we talk about a lot of stuff going on around the world of sports. I mean, the Lakers, we got more heads rolling. We've got more NFL contracts getting extended. We got Sterling Shepard, Adam Thielen to talk about as well. We're also going to talk about Fournette, who we haven't talked about yet, getting arrested down in Jacksonville, and then we've got the NBA playoffs as well coming up. So it's good to see everybody. Sharif, glad to see you in from Houston and everything. Frank, good to see you too. Look, I'm already buzzed, so I'm good to go. Don't worry about my level, Frank. I'm already where I need to be. Let's start with Adam Thielen. Obviously, I think he's the big news of the day, signing a new 4-year, $64 million extension with the Minnesota Vikings. Huge contract for a 28-year-old wide receiver because this is going to put him through his 28-year-old season, or I'm sorry, his 32-year-old season, and basically what this is going to mean is he's going to finish his career more than likely out there in Minnesota unless he takes a Jordy Nelson level contract. Oh, Frank, I should have let you know. You could have sat next to me at the bar, man. Talking about this Adam Thielen deal, it's a lot of money, man. $64 million to guarantee a receiver, especially when you're talking about Stephon Diggs, who's going to be due money coming up here as well. The Vikings, obviously, they've got the talent. You got to pay it when you've got it, and I like this move, but I am concerned if I am a Vikings fan, like, okay, we're spending a lot on this offense. We need to see more production. And Adam Thielen wasn't the problem. That's why he got this contract. That's why I'm not going to go out there and slam them for it, because he was obviously one of the guys driving this offense for the past couple of years. But when you look at it, again, you need to see better results out of this offense as an entire unit. Now that the guys are getting paid, they're going to have to eventually start producing here if we're going to see them take that next step forward and start competing for a Super Bowl. A lot of money. Again, 64 over 4 years. It could go all the way up to 73 as well. They haven't released any of the guaranteed numbers yet, but I mean, it's very interesting. Again, they're all in on this wide receiving core, and usually when you see this money shift towards the offense, the defense falls apart as well. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen in Minnesota and whether they can keep this team together long enough to go try and win a Super Bowl ring. Going to the comments really quick. Sharif says Diggs is better than Thielen. I don't know about that. I mean, Diggs has a tendency to disappear through some games, and Adam Thielen, even though he's more of the possession side of it, is that guy that constantly shows up. He's always making results. Whereas Diggs will have flashy games, then Diggs will have games where he has 3 receptions. Diggs will have games where he has 2 receptions, and just doesn't make the same kind of impact. So I think when you're talking about it, consistency is king in the NFL, and I like to see that. Again, you're talking about 2 top 10 wide receivers in the NFL. They're a great pairing, maybe the best one in football. But I think I'd take Thielen. If I'm picking one of them and I got to have one good season, I think I'm going to have a guy like Thielen out there who's going to contribute in every one of these games, not just throw up some highlight numbers in some and then disappear through others. Sharif, you're also saying that Diggs can stretch the field. Yes, he can. But they're 2 different types of receivers. Out of Adam Thielen, you are asking for a guy who can sit there and make 7, 8, 9, 10 catches. He can make contested catches. He can make those plays. You know, he's not the flash guy, but you don't need him to be the flash guy. You need him to move the ball down the field, and he does that very well. Diggs is that flash guy who will keep the pressure off of Thielen and keep him open as well. Look, I mean, they're 2 sides of the same coin. I think they work better together, and I'm not going to fault you for saying Diggs is better than Thielen or Thielen is better than Diggs. But I think they're both fantastic wide receivers. I think Minnesota's going to wind up paying them both before too long. And it's going to be one of the best 1-2 punches. If Kirk Cousins is going to turn around with somebody, I like these guys to do it in 2019, as long as they keep him protected. Now, Frank's also saying his hands are great. I totally agree with you there. He's one of the best hands wide receivers in the NFL. He's one of those guys that, again, he's a chain mover. He's that guy you rely to that's going to create a little bit of wiggle room. You throw it right in between the numbers. He's going to catch it, maybe turn upfield a little bit, but more often than not, he's going to make that catch, and he's going to get you the yardage you need, especially with the Vikings taking a step back in their running game last year before, week 15, 16, when they decided they wanted to put an emphasis on it. They needed Adam Thielen. Without him, I don't know what those games would have looked like because they weren't great even when they could throw the ball to Thielen. The offensive line's got to get better. The running game has to get better, for sure, up there in Minnesota. But they locked down one of their strengths, and I am never against locking down a strength and making sure you keep it around for a long time. Make sure he's wearing purple for a while. Next, let's talk about another extension that happened in the NFL. Sterling Shepard. It came down on Wednesday. He got a new 4-year, $41 million extension. Now, if I had to pick one of these contracts, I'm taking Thielen at 64 over Shepard at 41, but it's pretty obvious the Giants believe in this guy, right? I mean, you don't go and throw this much money at a 25-year-old who you still had under contract for about $1.5 million. I think it was like $1.2 million for this next season. So for them to go with Sterling Shepard and show him this kind of extension beforehand, it shows that they have faith in him. It might be a little reactionary to Odell Beckham being gone and them saying, oh, well, we got to have somebody. We signed Golden Tate. We gave him a lot of money. Let's go make Sterling Shepard the highest paid guy, prove to him that he is going to be the future of the Giants organization, of the Giants wide receiver core. And, you know, they did that. If I had to pick a guy that won this one, it's pretty obviously Sterling Shepard, right? You look at this, there's no way you can sit there and tell me that the Giants were smart got the winning end of this deal, giving a guy that, yeah, he's had some success. He's had about 2,000 yards across his career through 3 years. He's had a little bit of success with the Giants, but that's with Odell Beckham playing across him. That's when Evan Ingram's also taken some of the defense's attention away. Sterling Shepard won this deal because not only did he get a huge number for a guy that hasn't produced at the same level as some other wide receivers, but he also got that number at 25 years old, that 4-year contract, so he's going to be coming off of this right around when he's 29 years old. He's going to be due for another big contract. Look, this is perfect for him. If the Giants want to hang on to him, he's going to be 29 years old, and then he's going to be able to leverage the last 3 or 4 years of his career into another big contract. He might get an even bigger deal next time. So Sterling Shepard won this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm glad he's sticking around in New York because they did need to keep him. I would have liked to see this number be way lower, though. Moving forward here, Frank says Cousins is the problem with the passing game. I disagree, Frank. I think they just took him out of what made him strong. When he was in Washington, they had an amazing offensive line, even though those guys got hurt all the time. But he was never one of those guys that's just going to dodge pressure. And as poorly as the Vikings protected him last year, I don't think you could sit there and put that much blame on Kirk Cousins. Yes, his game needs to step forward. He needs to do better, but it's the first year in a new scheme. They didn't protect him at all, and he's one of those guys that needs to stand on a hill in the pocket and just deliver the ball. I think if they can actually protect him, we're going to be talking about seeing the best version of Kirk Cousins this year that we could have seen. I'm still high on that deal. I get it. He's not Case Keenum, or at least what Case Keenum did for the Minnesota Vikings. But when you look at what he can do, when you look at what he's done in the past for Washington, you got to sit there and say, we need to do the things that are going to help him succeed. And if they do that, this is still a playoff level team. When you look at the defense, when you look at the receivers, when you look at how the running game should be performing, they've got everything under the sun. Now you just have to protect the quarterback, and we're talking about this team being great, going from okay to good to back to playoff contention, back to Super Bowl contention. Also, Frank says the Giants are stretching with that deal with Sterling Shepard. Man, I could not agree more. Not a great move by them. Again, it's hard to criticize because when you see a talent like Odell Beckham leave, you don't want the entire receiver room to just fall apart and have Sterling Shepard go into the last year of his deal where he can hold you hostage in the offseason. But this is a lot of money, man. I mean, credit to Sterling Shepard's agent. He saw the opportunity to take advantage of this Giants front office, and he took it. I mean, he got Sterling Shepard paid, and as to whether this actually guides the Giants closer to a Super Bowl or not, I wouldn't say it does, but he's a quality weapon, and right now he might be the best receiver in that room with Golden Tate being 31 now. I don't know. I guess we'll see. You guys let me know in the comments. Who do you think's the better end of that wide receiving group? Is it Sterling Shepard or is it Golden Tate? Now, Sharif's saying it's a decent price for him. I don't think that's a decent price. That's pretty steep. Over $10 million a year for a guy that, again, he's had a couple 1,000-yard seasons, but that's always been as the number 2 option. He's never really set the world on fire with his play. I just don't think that kind of money for a guy that's, again, got, I think, 2,200 career yards across 3 years. That's a lot. That's showing a lot of faith in what you think he could do rather than what he's done in the past. Also, Frank's asking how many playoff wins does he have. I think you're talking about Kirk Cousins there. Not many, and I get it. I get your point, but on the other hand, what did Washington have? I mean, he made it happen with Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, who were both towards the tail end of their wide receiving career, or at least the end of their effectiveness. He looked really good with those guys. I think you're talking about Diggs, you're talking about Thielen. You got to definitely call that an upgrade. He's got the defense that's much better than it was when he was in Washington. Everything's lining up. I get it. He hasn't had the playoff success right now, but football's a team sport, man. You can't be too hard on him. Going back to the comments here, Thomas is saying the Masters are going on. Basketball is going on. Well, we're going to talk basketball here soon. We're not going to talk about the Masters probably until the end of it. I don't want to go too far into the Masters because things change quickly, and by the time a lot of people hear it, it's not all going to be the same. Tiger finished, I think, -6 today. That's important. That's important in the world of golf because the viewership takes a nosedive when he's not in it. I think golf is glad to see Tiger, at least competing in one of these tournaments. Also, he's asking about spring football. I mean, there's not much spring football going on here unless you want to talk about some of these spring games in college. Again, that's just school-by-school basis. I can't cover 120-some schools in the 30 minutes we're probably going to spend with each other, so we'll talk about something else here. Also, going forward here, Jeremy says, Aaron Rodgers' situation, what do we think about that? Again, I think a lot of this might be overblown. We've talked about A-Rod a little bit here in the past, but it's not a good light for the Packers organization, especially if there's any truth to him not meeting with Matt LaFleur, the new head coach up to this point. Do I think I think Aaron Rodgers is a bit of a diva. I believe some of this is true. I believe some of it's overblown, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of what we've heard and what they're saying in Green Bay. I think when you look at this, is it going to affect anything? Probably not. He's still going to be the quarterback there. He's still going to be a dominant quarterback. They're trying to increase his defense. They're trying to make things better on that side of the ball. At the end of the day, I think this is just off-season smoke. This is one of those stories that pops up that by the time spring training rolls around, it probably won't mean a whole lot. But we could talk about it if you want. Frank, just to be clear, I wasn't saying the Giants team going to the Super Bowl. I was saying, do you think this moves them anywhere closer? Again, he's a good player. And Golden Tate's probably not going to be around by the time they're ready to make that move. Maybe in a couple of years' time, we're talking about he's the number 2 guy again in this wide receiving room, and the Giants are going back to trying to push for a Super Bowl because they fixed the defense and they added another stud at wide receiver or another playmaker that can make a huge impact, like another amazing tight end to pair with Evan Ingram. But for right now, you're right. They might be one of the farthest teams away from it. And definitely probably bottom 10 in my opinion. Maybe bottom 5. That might be a little far, but again, I don't think this big money contract towards Sterling Shepard really helps them that much. Maybe you avoided paying him more in the next offseason when his contract is actually up, but that's a lot of money for a guy that, like I said before, has not really proven it. Going forward here, Jeremy says, Shepard over Tate. It's close, though. I agree with you, Jeremy. I think I would still probably give the edge to Sterling Shepard, but I don't know, man. It just depends. Probably in the moment, maybe Golden Tate's the better receiver, but he's 31. You can't build your franchise if you're the Giants around a 31-year-old guy because, again, you have nobody on the front 7 left on your defense, or at least nobody that's that impressive. They have Ogletree that's a good linebacker. Your secondary needs help as well. They're nowhere near the Super Bowl, so you can't bet on a 31-year-old wide receiver. This is let's try to make Eli Manning's last year, if this is his last year, as painless as possible by putting at least something out there that might be able to do something with a quarterback who's definitely declining in talent. Also, Scott says the Freak for MVP. That would be my pick. Honestly, I think he should. I think the Greek Freak should walk away with this, but you never know. It could be Harden again. It could be anyone else. One thing's for sure, I don't think it's LeBron missing the playoffs. I don't think he's going to make it. I think that's a name that we haven't really been talking about being in the MVP this year, which has been, refreshing in my opinion for a change. This has been all about LeBron. He's always in there. He's always a top 2, top 3, top 4 guy. I wonder if we're finally starting to see that change of the guard or whether this is just, a blip on the radar and LeBron gets healthy next year and he comes back. I don't know. That remains to be seen. It's one of the interesting talking points in basketball, though. And Matthew says Rodgers is 100% a diva. I totally agree with that. I think he is a diva when you look at quarterbacks. I mean, you look at the guy, the way he complains for flags and everything, and a lot of guys do. But when you look at the way Aaron Rodgers plays, let me just tell you, it's tough being the team playing against him because it seems like anytime your team makes a play or anything happens at all, he's in the ref's ear. So yeah, he's a diva, but you got to admit he's one of the most talented divas out there. So at least he's not a prima donna in that respect. All right. Let's see. I think we're good on the comments, so we'll move forward here. Not our last football story, but our next football story is Chris Hogan signing a new deal with the Panthers. It's only a 1-year contract, probably for somewhere around league minimum. Does a 32-year-old wide receiver coming into Carolina give you a lot of, expectation for what's going to happen with this team? I think it's pretty obvious when you look at this wide receiving core with Devin Funchess moving on, with them going with guys like Curtis Samuel, who's young, DJ Moore, who's only 21 years old as well. When you see these young guys in this wide receiver room, I don't mind them bringing on an old face like Chris Hogan that's been around. He's been deep in the playoffs. He's been to Super Bowls. I don't mind them bringing on a guy like this, but it's all moot if Cam Newton doesn't play because you can't have any one of these backup quarterbacks come in here and expect that, Chris Hogan's going to solve all those problems. Either they draft a guy this year, which I still see is pretty unlikely, or Cam Newton is healthier and gets healthy before the season starts than I think everybody kind of expects him to be. That, to me, is the biggest question in Carolina. What is Cam Newton what kind of shape is he going to be in? And does a guy like Chris Hogan, who struggled to generate space for New England towards the end of his stint there, does that really help them? I don't know. I look at this and I'm worried. This is kind of one of those signings that, yeah, it's on the cheap. Maybe he contributes a little bit, but again, this does not generate much movement in that, power rankings for the Carolina Panthers. So let me know your opinion in the comments. Do you think that a guy like Chris Hogan can somehow revitalize his career at 32 out there in Carolina, or is this just one of those guys, this might be the last stop on his career? I think it's probably closer to the last stop, but I guess we'll see. Now, Scott says the Bucs are good because of the Greek Freak, and I absolutely agree, man. He is the heart and soul of that team. Again, he's my MVP pick. I think when you look at how dominant he's been, when you look at the way he's kind of turned this Milwaukee team, not necessarily around, but he made them into a 1 seed in the East. I think, to me, that's hands down, he's the MVP this year. I think, again, this might be the beginning of the turning of a page in the NBA, where we're talking about guys like Embiid and guys like Giannis and everything, taking that front stage and finally taking that step forward to be an elite player in the NBA. Also, Sharif says Hogan needs Cam to throw him the rock. I'm going to disagree. I think he needs someone better than Cam to throw him the rock, but at the very least, you got to have Cam out there. You can't be rolling with one of these backups. Again, maybe they take a flyer on a second-round guy if Cam Newton's not going to be healthy, and that just becomes their backup if Cam comes back. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those. They're in one of the toughest positions in football because they're really, really deep. They're not going to go get a top prospect. You may not need one with Cam only being 31 or 32 years old, but again, running quarterbacks don't seem to last in the NFL. Cam's got a lot of licks on him. I just wonder if Cam Newton is going to be the future of this franchise in the next 5 years. I really wonder where they're at and what this signing actually means to them. My guess, they're bringing on a veteran on a one-year deal, on a cheap deal that can just maybe guide these young wide receivers forward a little bit so that maybe in 2020, if you get a healthy Cam and you can build this defense back up, we're talking about the Carolina making a resurgent and making a push. I don't see the 19 being their year, though. Moving forward here, Matthew says he's happy his guy Adam Thielen remains in Minnesota, and that was the point I made, man. This 4-year extension pretty much means he's going to end his career there in Minnesota more often than not, unless he takes like a Jordy Nelson-type deal to go play with a team that isn't necessarily a competitor. This means he's going to be wearing those purple jerseys for the next, probably the rest of his career. Also, Frank says, have I seen the video of a Vikings fan punching a 13-year-old girl from New Orleans? I have not, but not a classy move. Let's face it, man. Every one of these fan bases has those jerk fans that everybody has some, and we all know who they are. But again, we'll see what happens. I don't really think you can sit there and say Minnesota has a bunch of jerks for fans because you have one kind of incident like that. Brian also says the Panthers might need to be able to grab a QB with the 16th pick, but they need an offensive lineman or a defensive back. I totally agree there, Brian. It might be the second round. It could be someone like Daniel Jones if he falls. It could be someone like Will Grier if somehow he falls to them in the second round at 16. I just don't see him spending pick 1 on it. Like you said, they need offensive linemen. They need it badly because let's say Cam does come back healthy, because they don't know at this point. They don't know how his body's going to react in the next couple months, whether he's going to be ready to go. They need somebody to protect him. He's 31. He's had a shoulder injury now, kind of like Andrew Luck has, and he's a running quarterback that's going to be taking a lot of hits. You need to minimize as many of those hits as possible. I think they go offensive line still with that pick 16, but it'll be interesting to see. I thought they were one of these teams that was going to be interested in Joe Flacco, was going to be interested in a guy like Case Keenum, and was going to try to acquire a bridge guy who, if Cam can't go, can be the backup, or at least compete with Cam on some sort of level for the starting job, but it seems like they're all out on that. They may even pass on a quarterback in this and just expect Cam to be back. I don't know, but I think Carolina's in a pretty rough spot when you look at the Saints. When you look at the Falcons, who will probably be better. When you look at Tampa Bay, who's going to spend some picks and maybe get out of the basement of that division. We could be talking about the Panthers being the 4th spot in the NFC South next year if they don't get their act together or if they don't figure it out. All right, going back here. Scott wants to stay on basketball. I promise you, Scott, we'll get to that here in just a minute. We're going to talk about the Lakers here next. Also, Matthew says, like I said, it's easy to bring up one story. It doesn't happen with every Vikings fan, man. Again, bad things happen. Every one of these sports franchises out there, it doesn't matter what kind of sport it is, you're going to have these guys that are going to go out there and misbehave. That's just human nature. Let's just sit there and say, we don't condone what he did, but we can't sit there and say the Vikings are bad because of that. I mean, that's all I can say. Brian says, have we seen them clowning on Fitzpatrick, calling him Fitzpatrick? I haven't seen that, no, but again, when you're Miami, I think you need to be happy that somebody got there. Fitzpatrick's another guy I would like to see in Carolina. I mean, again, not a guy that's necessarily going to win you a ton of games, but might be able to bridge the gap in case you get Cam Newton back in midseason. They didn't really go after any one of those guys. That's kind of interesting to see. Sharif's also saying the Pistons are going to get swept. Again, we'll move forward so we can talk basketball here. I see you guys are ready to talk about it, so we'll move forward. My last thing before we talk about the Lakers, obviously Leonard Fournette is arrested in Jacksonville. I'm sure he's out on bail by now because he's got all that money in the world from his rookie contract. But he got arrested on something stupid, not paying a traffic ticket or something like that, or a parking ticket. Pretty dumb for a guy that's got all this money in the world and basically could throw that money away. I mean, that's pocket change. That's nothing. That's a couple bucks to you or me. For him to sit there and ignore that when he's already kind of in hot water in Jacksonville is a bit of an issue. I think that's kind of a concern when you're going forward because they're talking about getting rid of him already. I mean, between the suspension last year from I think it was him throwing a punch in Buffalo to apparently his attitude in the locker room, we're seeing kind of a shift in Jacksonville where they're starting to want some more high character guys. We're starting to see them not want as much talking. That's why they were talking about moving on from Jalen Ramsey, why they're talking about moving on from Fournette. So to have this happen in an offseason where you've got a team that's like, okay, man, you got to start cleaning it up. You got to start getting your career back together. It's not a good look. I don't think they're going to move on from him. They still desperately need him in Jacksonville. I don't think they have another running back. I don't think Grant is a good enough running back really to take the reins from him. But again, this is that kind of move that make Jacksonville think about taking a 4th-round running back and seeing if they can get a replacement or something along those lines. Not a good look for him, but we'll move forward here. Finally, let's talk about the Lakers before we talk about the NBA playoffs. If you haven't heard, Luke Walton is out, which kind of debunks that theory that we've heard that, oh, well, Magic Johnson retired or walked away from the Lakers organization because he wanted Luke Walton gone, and the Lakers were still all in on him being the coach. Obviously, that's out. To me, this sounds like LeBron's getting his way. I really do think that. I mean, I think they're going to bring in a coach like Ty Lue that LeBron's going to be able to walk all over and basically start calling the shots. And we kind of saw when that happened this year, we saw the Lakers really start to grenade. That's when they started falling off because it made all these young guys not buy into what's going on anymore. I think we're going to see some major shakeups in the Lakers organization and in their roster in this offseason. The question to me is going to be, are the Lakers going to be able to lure in that next big superstar? Maybe someone like Kyrie returns to play with LeBron. Maybe it's someone like Durant leaves Golden State to go play with the Lakers instead. But they need to add that next free agent and then maybe acquire somebody else, whether it's Anthony Davis through trade, if they're going to compete with these teams in the West. My question is going to be, is that going to happen? I don't think so. I look at this. I don't think LeBron is going to be able to lure the guys. At 35 years old, he was able to lure, at 31, at 32 out there in Cleveland. So I think the Lakers are in trouble. I don't think you can go put a figurehead of a coach in there and just expect to be good in the West with the way this division or with the way this conference looks because they're too good. I mean, realistically, you've got way too many teams that are in the mix now, especially with teams like Oklahoma City finally coming together. You still got the Rockets. You still have Golden State. You now have the Nuggets that are playing really well as well. Portland's in the mix. Look, this is the best conference in football, hands down, still. I don't think the Lakers going all in on bringing LeBron James guys in and putting those guys around him are really going to lead to success. I think this might wind up tanking this Lakers franchise for the last couple of years of LeBron's career. So let me know what you think about that. Am I on the money with that, or do you guys see this as a good move to get Luke Walton out of there and maybe put in a LeBron guy? I don't know that that's going to happen, but to me, when I see this, again, I'm not buying in all the LeBron was shocked to see Magic not come or to announce his resignation and everything. I don't buy that for a sec. Not for a second. He knew about it. They met beforehand a couple days before for like hours at a time. Look, they know what was going on. I think Magic just lost the battle, and they probably told him, look, we're going to bring in LeBron's coach. We're going to bring in somebody who can gel with LeBron, and we need you out of here. You can either resign or we can fire you, and Magic just took the high road and said, you know what? I'll just resign. All right. Frank says, here comes Pat Riley back to L.A. I disagree, and here's why. There were all those rumors out there in Miami about LeBron trying to get Spoelstra fired. Before they won any championships, LeBron didn't like Spoelstra, wanted him out of there. And I think Pat Riley was the guy that stood up to him and said, look, no, he's the coach. You play basketball. He coaches the team. That's the way things work. I don't think LeBron's looking for a guy that's going to stand up to him. He's looking for some yes men. He's looking for guys that he can put in place that are going to allow him to play GM, basically. And I think we've seen in Cleveland, yeah, it got him one championship, but it took a lot of help from the refs to bring him back from a 3-1 deficit against Golden State. Except for that, I mean, yeah, they went a couple times, but they didn't really stand that much of a chance of beating Golden State, number one. And number two, look at the franchise now. I mean, they overpaid guys like Tristan Thompson. They overpaid guys like J.R. Smith and gave them these terrible contracts that's just destroyed Cleveland's franchise. If the Lakers sell out to winning right now in this moment and getting LeBron another championship or two before he retires, I think they're going to just wreck this franchise. And you've already got a bunch of young guys like Ingram. You've got guys like Kuzma that are growing, that are only going to get better. And you've got a guy like LeBron who's only going to get worse as time moves forward. I think they're betting on the wrong horse here. I think that's what's going on. And I think they're betting on the wrong horse. Let me go back to the comments here. Sharif says Tyronn Lue is trash. I kind of agree with you, but he's just one of those guys that's going to let LeBron walk all over him, and he'll let LeBron do what he wants. I'm not saying you can't have some success with that guy. They may make the playoffs with Tyronn Lue as the head coach who just lets LeBron do his thing. But are you willing to bet your franchise on LeBron being the GM again? We've already seen case studies of that in Cleveland where things have not worked out, and you could sit there and say, oh, well, if he brings other guys that aren't Kevin Love and it's not Kyrie, maybe they could be more successful, and I'll give you that. But I look at this and I'm like, we've already got a pretty long running thing where LeBron wants his guys paid, like guys like Tristan Thompson, guys like J.R. Smith. And when that happens, you're going to sink an NBA franchise pretty quick like that. Nathan says, what do you think of Kobe Bryant taking over for Magic? I don't think it's going to happen because, again, I think they kind of caved to LeBron here. LeBron is not going to want another big attitude. He's going to want to be the biggest ego in the room, and he's definitely not going to sit there and want to have to deal with a guy like Kobe Bryant where, you know, if you ask a lot of Lakers fans, they're going to sit there and say Kobe Bryant is the better player all time than LeBron is. I don't think he wants any of those comparisons. He wants this to be about him and his legacy going forward, so he does not want LeBron, or he does not want Kobe anywhere near this franchise. I really just don't see it happening. I think it'd be a good move by the Lakers, maybe not necessarily in a presidential role like Magic was. I would like to see more of an NBA executive kind of guy step into that role who's all about basketball, who knows how to pull trades off, who knows how to get the best value for everything. I don't want to see a player in that role, but I would like to see Kobe involved somehow. I'd rather see Kobe as a coach than I would rather see him as a team president or something along those lines. Let's go back to the comments here. Sharif said no one wanted to play with the Lakers. They had one roster spot to pick up buyout players, and no one wanted to play in LA. I absolutely agree, man, and you have all these young contracts. I think, again, it wasn't the most lucrative spot before LeBron went there, but now that he is there, I don't think you're going to bring on guys like Durant here in the offseason. You're not going to go get Klay Thompson if he leaves Golden State to move and go play second fiddle to a guy like LeBron who, like I said, he's only going to slow down from here. We've seen him start to get injured now. We've seen him miss significant numbers of games because he's been injured. We've seen him get shut down at the end of seasons. At 35, time catches up with everybody. Eventually, LeBron is going to slow down. Do you want to go bet a 4 or 5 year contract to go play with LA on a guy who's 35, who is going to command that everything that happens goes by, it's either his way or the highway? I wouldn't. I'd rather go take my chances with the Knicks and see if they get the first overall pick, sign with them, try to lure another star, and try to rebuild New York than I would want to go play with LeBron. And especially if you are stuck with all these young guys, because it's pretty clear none of these guys want to stick around. None of these guys want to play with LeBron, who's just tried to have them traded. So your team chemistry is going to be back in the toilet unless you hire a great coach that can sit there and turn around and take command, and I just don't see that happening. I think LeBron is going to get his way. He's going to get his guy. We're going to see a lot of roster moves. We're going to see a lot of trades, and it's going to remain to be seen as to whether they're going to be able to bring in enough talent to make this work. I'm not betting on it, though. I think the Lakers are going to take a big step back here. I don't like the move so far. Let's go back to where you guys are at. Scott says the Lakers wanted to go young and build, and then Magic messes it up by bringing in LeBron. I don't even think bringing LeBron in is the biggest problem with this. The problem comes from bowing to LeBron and his wishes to try to go out and trade for Anthony Davis mid-season because he can't afford to miss the playoffs because he's getting older. You should have sat there and said, when LeBron said, look, I want you to bring in Anthony Davis, you should have said, it costs too much. We sat there and we asked, and they came back with unreasonable demands, so we're not going to go sell all these young guys out just to bring in one guy so maybe you can make the playoffs and get bounced out by Golden State or the Rockets if we play them. I think that's just kind of a mistake. I think, again, where you've seen LeBron have his most success is in Miami, where Pat Riley was able to stand up to him and say, no, I mean, we're going to bring in who I want to bring in. You can say who you want, and I'm going to do what I can to acquire these guys, but at the end of the day, I run this team. LeBron hasn't had that guy since he left Miami, and I think that's been the biggest issue and why he hasn't been as successful. I don't think players make good GMs because you need to get along with the other 14 guys on this roster. They have not really done that with LeBron here. We saw the chemistry take a nosedive towards the end of the season. If they can't sit there and correct that, if they can't get a guy in there who's able to stand up to LeBron a little bit, look, I just see further downhill slide because, again, LeBron is not the guy he was at 31 when he won the championship with Cleveland. I really think you're going to see the Lakers take a big step back. Also, Sharif said, I didn't get why the Lakers traded Zubac. Again, I'm not sure. It was probably a money deal. They probably wanted to open up space to try to sign some guys in the offseason. The other prevailing thought when Magic resigned was, oh, he put these feelers out there. He tried asking around, and none of these free agents really seemed interested in moving to LA to play with LeBron, so he didn't want to be the GM that couldn't sign the guy to make LeBron succeed. That's still possible, but I think when you see Walton on his way out as well, I think that's less likely now. I think more than likely than anything, LeBron said, I don't like Luke Walton. I don't like the way Magic's running the team because he couldn't get AD, so I want them gone or I'm going to leave. And I think, again, Jeannie Buss just kind of sat there and said, okay, we'll make it happen. We'll do whatever it takes to make you happy. And that's not the way you need to run a franchise. You need to let the players play. You need to let the ownership run this thing. Otherwise, you run into a bunch of problems. You run into conflicts of interest like we saw in Cleveland, and it just winds up tanking your franchise. All right. moving forward here. I'm trying to catch up with some of these comments, guys. Sorry, it's a little bit tougher when you're a one-man show. But Sharif says Pat Riley is the Mafia Don in the NBA. I think if they can get him, that's great. I don't think it's going to happen. If I'm the Lakers, that's my first phone call. I'm going to see if I can bring him out there to LA and sit there and sell the prestige of the Lakers organization as to why he wants to come run your organization. I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I don't think he's going to want to go back to where LeBron has all the power. I don't think LeBron's going to let it happen. I think Pat Riley at this point is pretty much going to be a no-go out there in LA, but if it does happen, I think it's great. Sharif says LeBron has never had a coach that had clout. I agree with you there, but on the other hand, I don't think he would really... He had his chance to go sign with the Spurs. He could have signed with the Spurs this offseason. You want to tell me they wouldn't have made space for him if he wanted to coach with a guy like Popovich? I don't think LeBron wants that guy around there because, again, I think he has one of the biggest egos in the NBA. And this is a league full of big egos, so that's saying a lot. But I think he has a big ego, and he sits there and says, I want this to be about my legacy. I don't want it to be Popovich won these championships with LeBron on the team. I want it to be LeBron won these championships and carried guys like Spoelstra, carried guys like David Blatt and Ty Lue, carried all these coaches who didn't make an impact. Again, I think this is all about legacy. I think that's what he's thinking about here. He's thinking about when I retire, are they going to talk about me like they talk about Michael Jordan? And again, we talk about Michael Jordan as he won those rings, not necessarily Jackson, the coach, not necessarily anyone else on the Bulls. I think he wants to have a similar kind of legacy, and you don't do that necessarily by adding a high-profile coach. I think that kind of splits it up a little bit. All right, let's move forward. I want to talk about these NBA playoffs here. We're going to talk about your predictions. We're going to talk about my predictions. One real quick comment here. Nathan says Pat Riley wouldn't touch this team with a 10-foot pole. I don't know. If you could get LeBron to get back into his role of just being that leader on the team, being the mentor to some of these young guys. You've got a lot of young talent that, again, are only going to get better. Guys like Kuzma and guys like Ball, guys like Ingram. These guys are all going to get better as they play in the NBA. They're trending upward. It's what you want to see. They're going to be better. If he could get that, I think he'd take the job because, again, it's still one of the most storied franchises in the NBA and in all of sports. I mean, you got the Lakers and the Celtics. It's one of the two most famous franchises in the entire game. I think I definitely think about it. My question would be, am I going to be able to make LeBron back into a player rather than a GM or whatever you want to call it, into this, basketball mogul or whatever he's trying to do? Again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's why Pat Riley stays way away from this. Sharif says Pop would have checked LeBron. I don't think anyone checks LeBron, not at this point, and I think that's what we kind of saw out there in LA. Even the ownership were scared to sit there and stand up to him. But let's move forward. I want to hear your guys' predictions on these NBA games. Obviously, starting tomorrow night, we're going to start in the East. I want to start with Milwaukee going up against the Pistons. And I got to say this. Look, Milwaukee's #1 for a reason. You got Blake Griffin, who's still on an injured knee as well for the Pistons. I don't really see them standing much of a chance in this. It's always tough for me to pick sweeps. I just got punished saying the Tampa Bay Lightning on our last show were going to sweep Columbus. They lost Game 1. But, man, I like this to be a sweep. I think the Milwaukee Bucks are the real deal, man. I think they might stand the best chance of getting out of the East. They're #1 for a reason, and I think the Greek Freak is going to lead them to a sweep of the Detroit Pistons in this one. What do you guys think? Do you see this being a sweep by the Milwaukee Bucks, or do you see the Pistons actually putting up a little bit of fight here? I just don't see it without Blake Griffin. Even with him healthy, like 100%, I might still pick a sweep, but I'd sit there and say probably one game to them. Now, Sharif is also saying the Bucks will sweep the Pistons here. And Brian, he's ready to talk about the West. He's saying OKC is better than Portland. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Nathan's also taking the Bucks. How many games do you think, Nathan, do you think the Pistons are going to be able to win in this one, or do you see it as a sweep? I think this might be the second most likely sweep scenario in the NBA. You're never going to guess who's got the most likely. It's out there west in Golden State. We'll talk about that in a little bit, though. We'll move forward. Why don't we talk about the 4 seed, the Boston Celtics, going up against the Pacers next at the 5 seed. Look, I know the Pacers managed to get their way into the 5 seed, but the fact is they're 10-14 without Oladipo since he got hurt. They're not going to stand much of a chance in this, even though the Celtics are not as dominant. They're not the team they were kind of billed as. We thought that the Celtics were going to be, this super team this year when they had Hayward back healthy. They had Kyrie going. We haven't seen that yet. The question is going to be, can they turn it on here for the playoffs? This is the series to do it because I think the Pacers are one of the teams out there that may grab a win or two here, but they're really not standing much of a chance to beat the Celtics no matter what they look like. I think the Celtics just have the star power. They have the muscle to outlast them here. I think the Celtics are going to be able to win this one. I'm going to say 6. I think this one goes a little bit longer than everybody else does. I think the Pacers are going to win a few games here, probably at home, and then the Celtics probably close it out in Game 6. Going back to the comments here, Nathan saying 4-1, Milwaukee walks away with the win. He's given one of these games to the Pistons. I think it's interesting. But again, I think this is probably a sweep scenario as well. I can't wait to see. Sharif is going with the Pacers here. Big upset. I don't think so. Not in the first round. I think the Boston Celtics, they're too good of a team to sit there and just drop out in one series. This is at least a round 2 team. If they don't get it fired up, I think they're in trouble next round, but at the very least, I think they're going to have the muscle to beat an Oladipo-less Pacers. I think they move on and get a pretty easy, maybe not easy, but I think they get a win here. Nathan's going the opposite direction. He's saying Boston finally finds itself, gets a sweep, and he's going to take them to grab everything. And David is saying Boston might limp by Indiana. I don't know, guys. I'm not going to say limping. I think they win comfortably, but I think it's still probably a little bit of intrigue in this series. I think the Pacers hang around, maybe win Game 3, maybe win Game 4, and then we're talking about the Celtics probably just out-muscling them. Scott says Kyrie seems like he doesn't like being the guy. That's true, and, he kind of made up a little bit with LeBron here this season. Do you see him moving off from Boston to L.A.? I mean, what kind of betrayal would that be? Leaving the Celtics to go play for the Lakers, making up with LeBron? Maybe that's how the Lakers do get back on track, but at least in this series, Kyrie does not seem like he's 100%, like you said, the guy, but I think they're going to have enough muscle with Hayward playing pretty well here through the last stretch of the season. I think they're going to be able to handle the Pacers. But we'll see. Again, I like to see a little bit of controversy here. Maybe it's not as far gone conclusion as I thought everybody else said it was. Oh, Sharif saying he said the Celtics. Sorry if I misread that. And he's also saying Marcus Smart is hurt and Jaylen Brown needs to step it up. I agree with you. They just haven't ever seemed to gel. Going into the season, everyone was talking about, oh, well, they got Kyrie now. They've got Gordon Hayward, who's going to be coming back healthy from that terrible injury from a year ago. They've got all this young talent with Smart and Tatum and everyone else on this team, and they just have not really found it. I mean, they've never really gelled on all cylinders. They've never fired on all cylinders to make it happen. I think if there's a time to do it, it's right now. And this is the series to do it because, again, I don't think the Pacers are going to have the muscle to beat them. I think the Celtics win this one in 6. Let's move forward. Next, we're going to talk Philly versus the Nets. Obviously, you look at this, a 3 seed in Philadelphia should be able to handle a team like the Nets, who have played better. Let's face it, this is the second year in a row they've made the playoffs. I think the Nets are finally back, man. They're finally out of the bottom of the end of the NBA. And look, D'Angelo Russell, I think, has been fantastic. He's been an amazing pickup for them. And that was funny that Magic moved on from him, saying he didn't think he was that leader or he was that guy that could lead a team. It's funny to see him actually leading the Nets. I just don't think they're going to have the firepower, again, to keep up with a team like Philadelphia. Basketball is a game of have and have-nots. The 76ers are a team of haves, and I think the Nets are still a team of have-nots. While I think they're going to take a game or two, especially with Embiid not 100% healthy with some knee soreness and everything, I think probably the Sixers win this one. I'm going to say in 5. I don't think, again, the Nets are really that much of a contender to a team like the 76ers. I think they're going to be able to outmuscle them. They're going to play better defense, and the 76ers are probably going to wind up winning this one pretty easy. Going here back to the comments, Nathan saying trade LeBron. I would have thought about it. Honestly, I really would have thought about it. Moving on from LeBron as the Lakers organization, you probably could have traded him for a guy like Anthony Davis out there in New Orleans. I mean, I get it. He wouldn't have liked it, but it's not about what he likes. It's about what's making the Lakers better. And if you could have moved him to bring in a young talent like Anthony Davis that you can build around, you got all the rest of this young talent, I think you would have been able to lure another free agent with a guy like Anthony Davis on this team rather than, LeBron at 35 who needs to be in charge of everything. So, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. Going back to the comments again, back to the Nets and Sixers matchup, Sharif saying the Nets will make it interesting. He says the 76ers in 6, and the Sixers are playing with house money. Or I'm not sure if he was trying to say Nets or whether he was trying to say the 76ers. Look, I think they're probably going to win it in 5. I think the 76ers are the better team on paper, but again, they may trip up a little bit. Maybe it goes to 6. I don't think anyone's picking the Nets to win this series, but this is a building year for them. You got D'Angelo Russell, who now seems to be the guy. If you can add a superstar here, if you can make a splash move in free agency to put next to Russell, we might be talking about them actually making a deep run in the playoffs next year. I don't think they're quite there yet, but again, this is a good experience for these young players on this Nets team. It's going to give them a taste of the playoffs so that next year when they get into it, maybe you get another player on this team. You're going to be having a little bit more experience than going in there fresh and not knowing what to be ready for and everything. I like that the fact they made this and they made it as a 6 seed and not just going to get blown out as an 8 seed like we're going to talk about later. Going back to the comments here, David saying the Nets aren't quite there yet. Scott saying the Nets might win one of these games. I'm kind of there with you guys. I think we're all kind of in agreement. They'll probably win some. Everybody's pretty much saying the 76ers should run away with this one. But I can't wait to see it. I think I'm with you guys. I don't think it's a clean sweep, but I think the Nets are probably going to only win one or two here. Why don't we move forward here? David's saying the Lakers are a hot mess. I agree. They got a lot of figuring things out in a short time. I can't wait to see what happens with that. But for now, why don't we talk about Toronto and the Orlando Magic. Obviously, you look at the Raptors, the way they've played, the way Kawhi has been out there with Lowry and everything. I like the way they're at. I like them being a 2 seed. I think they're going to be able to handle Orlando. I know Vucevic has been really good, but the question is going to be, can he shoulder the load for the Magic against a much more complete team in Toronto? I really don't think it's there. I think Toronto's going to win this one pretty handily. I'm still going to sit there and say Orlando winds up taking one of these games. We're going to see Toronto move on to a 5-game series, but I don't really see much more beyond that. I'm not even going to give them 6. I think it's going to be 5, and Toronto walks on to the next round. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments right now. Sharif's saying Raptors in a sweep. I think, again, Vucevic will have a good enough game in Orlando to steal one of these games. You know, it's going to be one of those, maybe they're down 2-0, maybe they're down 3-0, and he's like, all right, the buck stops here. We got to have this game, and they go out and they take one. But I don't know. The Raptors are a really good team. I think they're going to manage to move on. They might still be the team that makes it to the finals, too. I mean, I like them. I don't think anyone's talking about them anywhere near as much as we were when they signed Kawhi. I mean, this team's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. For a 2 seed, it's hard to say, but they've kind of been under the radar for a lot of people, I think. Going back here, I agree with you, Sharif. He has been playing like a beast. And also, Austin, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Let's move over to the West Side. In what is the least, I think, debated thing, I think the Clippers, everyone kind of agree, don't stand much of a chance here in Golden State. The real question is going to be, does Golden State turn it on? Is everything we've been seeing till now, I mean, it's pretty obvious they've been taking it easy in the regular season, just winning some of these games and everything. Do they get the clean sweep? Does Golden State go 4-0 here? I think it's pretty obvious they do. I think we're going to see them return to playoff form, and with their 5 all-stars they've got out there, I think they're just going to absolutely steamroll the Clippers. Props to them for making it. I think once they traded Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan out of the building as well, nobody really picked this team to be a playoff team, but honestly, I don't see them winning one here. I got to go Golden State in a sweep. Going back here, Nathan is saying the Raptors are a sneaky team, and Brian's saying the Raptors in a sweep. Their fans are always pumped. I agree with you. I think they kind of smell blood in the water now that LeBron is out of the East, and they're going to sit there and say, hey, maybe this is our chance to finally make a finals here for the first time in a long time. So, again, they're one of the teams to beat. I think this is probably a 3-horse race when you look at it between Milwaukee, Philly, and the Raptors. I think the Celtics, unless they turn things around really quick, are not going to be in too deep in this playoffs, but we'll see. It could be a 4-team playoff bet, but for right now, I think there's 3 good teams in the East that have a chance of making the finals, and those are them. Let's talk about Golden State here. Let's see what you guys think about it. Nathan's saying he's taking the Clippers. All right, man, go put some money in Vegas on that. That would be a great upset. Be a great way to win a lot of money if you're right, man. But I think you'd have to be from the future to actually call that one right. I don't think there's anyone out there saying the Warriors are going to drop this. If they do, does it hurt the legacy? I'd say maybe a little bit. But, I mean, when you've won this many championships, when you've constantly been in the running, gone to this many finals, there's not much hurt in the legacy at this point. It'd be funny, but it's not going to happen. I don't think anyone can sit there and say the Warriors are losing this one. Sharif is saying the Warriors and Clippers are 1-2 in 3-point shooting. He's also saying the Warriors go 4-1 with high-scoring series. I agree with you, but I think at least with this being a high-scoring series, but I think the Warriors are pretty much going to steamroll here. Again, I think a lot of what we've seen have been the Warriors kind of taking it easy, not going 100% in the regular season. Now that they're in playoff time, this is usually where they dial it up, and I think the Warriors are absolutely going to turn on the Jets and just crush the Clippers, man. I can't sit there and say I can give them one game. I think this is a sweep. If there's a sweep to pick, this has got to be it for me. Going forward here, let's say Brian is saying hopefully they kick Draymond in the sack. I'm not hoping that because, look, I've been kicked in the sack. I don't sit there and wish that on anyone, but if it has to happen to someone, maybe it's okay that it happens to Draymond. That's all I can say. Let's move forward, though. Again, not much debate in that series. Here's an interesting series. Going forward, Houston Rockets going up against the Utah Jazz, the 4 versus the 5 seed. We saw some late season dramatics that dropped Houston all the way down to the 4. Now they have a really tough matchup here in round 1. I look at this and I'm like, this might actually be interesting. When you look at the way Utah plays defense, when you look at the way that kind of Coliseum just rocks out there in Utah, This might be a close series. I'm going to pick this one to go all the way to 7 games, which might be a little bit of a stretch. I know everybody likes Utah as a team, but not everybody's sitting there saying Houston's going to drop that many games to them. I just don't think they're going to have the offense to go with Donovan Mitchell out there in Utah to really challenge Houston for this. I think it goes to 7 games. I think it's going to be a great series. We're going to see Harden turn it on. We're going to see Paul have a great series as well. But I think this is going to be more of a challenge in round 1 than the Rockets want to see. I just hope they get through it healthy, because the Rockets are definitely one of those teams. If something happens to Chris Paul, I don't think they're making it too much farther. That, to me, might be the most interesting, maybe second most interesting matchup out of this entire first round, and I can't wait to see what happens. I really can't. I mean, you look at this, Donovan Mitchell, great player for Utah, but that's about all they have for high-level scoring on that team. I really don't see anyone else stepping up. My question is going to be, are we going to have some heroics out of Utah where we get somebody stepping up and scoring a lot of points that we don't see? Because the game plan for me is going to be take Donovan Mitchell out of the game if I'm Houston. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I really don't think Utah is going to be able to outmuscle them. What do you guys think? Scott saying Curry is nursing an injury and he should sit the whole first round. I wouldn't blame him. I mean, honestly, if I'm Kerr and that's what's going to help this team out, and I think a healthy Curry helps this team a lot, and you think you got it, and you probably do, I wouldn't mind not seeing him at all in the first series. But then again, there's also such a thing as momentum, and I don't necessarily know that I want to go play somebody like a Utah, like Houston in the second round, and have Curry that's coming off the bench having not played in a week. That to me is kind of the most worrisome thing. That's why I try to get him a little bit of action. Maybe you put him on the second line. Maybe you rotate him in with some of the backups, and you try to give him some more rest, take some minutes away from him, and that's the way you kind of balance it out. But I don't know if I necessarily rest him the whole way through. Also, David saying the Warriors bench could beat the Clippers. I don't know about that one. Like Sharif said, the Clippers shoot pretty well from 3. I don't know if I'd gamble on just the bench, but it'd still be a competitive series. Also, Nathan is saying he hates the Rockets, but you can't bet against James Harden. He's really good. I agree with you, and that's the reason I got to sit. Him alone, I think, is the reason I'm going to sit there and take Houston. The NBA is still an offensive sport. I get it. Good defense is important for championships and everything, but you got to have some scores to go along with it. Utah does not have that outside of Donovan Mitchell. They don't have the firepower to keep up with Houston. This is going to be a tougher matchup for Houston, tougher than they want to see. I hope they don't grind them out too long and we see a second-round exit out of Houston, because I still think the best matchup is going to be Golden State versus Houston. Even though we've seen OKC come along, even though Portland's moved up to the 3 seed, even though the Nuggets are playing really well, I still think the best matchup is Houston versus Golden State. So I want to see them make it all the way through. I just don't know that we're going to see that. All right, let's move forward, guys. Let's talk about Portland going up against OKC. Oklahoma City, as a 6 seed, is a dangerous squad. This is, to me, is going to be the most interesting out of any one of these matchups, because I think Portland is probably going to drop it. I think when you talk about star power, when you talk about everything that OKC can do, they're very athletic. I think they're going to be able to challenge Portland on the 3-point line with their athleticism. And when that happens, I think we're going to see an early exit out of Portland. We're going to see Westbrook finally make a deeper push into the playoffs than we've seen in the years past. We're going to see George firing on all cylinders. We're going to see him and Westbrook and Adams really dominate this series, and I think we're going to see them kind of step forward as that, maybe Cinderella to make a deep push and maybe face someone like Golden State in the second round and give them a challenge. I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen, but I like to see OKC go up against a team like Portland. I think it's a very balanced series. It's going to be the best one out there, I think. Maybe second best. Maybe Denver and San Antonio is the best one, but I really do like this matchup. I think it's going to be more interesting basketball than we're used to seeing in the first round. I can't wait for this one. Who do you guys think? Let me know in the comments who's walking away with the wins here. Brian is saying the Thunder fans have learned to not sleep on the Jazz. I totally agree with you there. The Jazz are a great team. Sharif's taking OKC in 6, though. I think this is going to be OKC in 7. I think this is a tougher matchup for them than everyone wants to sit there and say. Look, I look at this. You look at McCollum, you look at Lillard. They've got some players on Portland that are going to be able to challenge guys like Westbrook and guys like Paul George. It's going to be an interesting series for sure. I think this one goes to 7. I think Portland loses out right at the end. I think Adams might be the difference here. He might be better than a guy like Enes Kanter, but I think you're going to see Adams really make the difference here. He's going to be that guy that's that third guy that can sit there and be really the key to the series. He's going to be able to make that last play. He's going to be able to get some of those rebounds that the Trailblazers are going to miss out on. I think that's going to be the difference here. Also, Sharif saying Paul George is going to go off. I know. I mean, this has been what a revitalizing season for him. I'm glad to see him back. He hasn't quite been that guy since he had that terrible injury at the Olympics a long time ago. I'm glad to see him back, and I think this might be the year that they kind of put that stamp on, okay, Oklahoma with Paul George, if they keep him around, can be a dangerous team even with Westbrook. Brian says Westbrook is looking towards the conference championship against he who shall not be named. Look, I mean, unless the Spurs beat the Nuggets, I really think they're going to face Golden State in the second round if they win the series. I don't think you can look past that. You can't sit there and tell me they're going to make the conference championship having to go up against a team like Golden State. That, to me, is going to be tough. I think they're hoping the Spurs manage to pull it out and they don't have to play a team like that in the second round. And Sharif saying Adams is a workhorse. I totally agree. He's a grinder. He's going to be the difference maker in this series. You're saying Paul George is going to go crazy. I think we all expect that. I think we all expect the Stars to do their thing. I think Adams is that guy that's one level down that's going to be the difference. All right, guys, let's move on to our last matchup here. We're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets going up against the San Antonio Spurs, and I know a lot of people have this as the upset game. It's easy to sit there and pick experience with guys like San Antonio and Greg Popovich, who's got probably the most playoff experience out of any coach in the NBA right now. I think when you look at this series, again, youth is a big factor. It's usually a negative when you're talking about the playoffs because experience is an important factor in these games. But I think when you look at Denver, when you look at the way they've played, when you look at guys like Jokic and guys like Jamal Murray, who, if he gets on a hot streak, is going to be absolutely fantastic in the series. I think the Denver's going to have the firepower to outshoot him. I think it goes to 7 games. I think it's going to be one of the more interesting series in this first round. But I think they've got too much going on for them. I think they have the superior bench to the Spurs. I think they've got superior scoring options. Again, the Spurs have that top-end talent. They've got guys like DeRozan. They've got guys like Aldridge. They have that like star power, that name power. But we've seen the Nuggets do it for an entire series. I don't think they're pretenders at this point. They're the 2 seed for a reason. I think even though they're young, they're going to have the firepower. They're going to have the muscle to just simply beat the Spurs that I don't think have the roster to make a deep push here. But it's going to be an interesting series. Again, I think the Spurs have a tough road. You got the Nuggets first. If they win that, I think it's pretty obvious you're going to be playing Golden State in the second round. I can't wait to see what happens here, but I think this is going to be an early exit for the Spurs. I think they need to retool this roster a little bit. They probably need to add another guy. I just don't believe in DeRozan and Aldridge as those 2 guys that are going to be able to make you at least into the second round. I think you need better than that, to be honest with you. Let's go to the comments here. Sharif says the Spurs will match up well, and San Antonio will steal a game in Denver. He says Spurs in 7. Again, I think this goes to 7. I think it's one of the more even matchups here. Even though it's a 2 versus a 7, I think it's going to be interesting. Again, you're talking about experience versus youth. Usually experience wins that out, but that to me is the best factor I can sit there and point to for San Antonio. Is they've been around the block. These guys have all been to the playoffs before, whereas the Nuggets are kind of new to the scene. I wonder if they're going to have the cool head it's going to take to beat San Antonio. I think they are. I think they're going to have just enough to get through this round. I don't know about later than that, but I like them to get through the first round at least. I'm going to go Nuggets in 7 still. Nathan's saying Spurs in 7. He's also saying, Sharif is saying DeRozan will be the difference here. He's a scorer, and maybe he can get hot. I mean, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder, having been traded out of Toronto. I'm sure he would love nothing more than to see the Spurs face Toronto in the finals, but I think when you look at this, I just don't think they got the. I don't think they have the rest of the team. I think DeRozan's going to have a great series. I think Aldridge is going to look pretty good too. But I think the Nuggets are number 2 for a reason again, and I think they're going to manage to get it done. I think they have the better offense. I think they have the better defense. I think they have the better depth. I'm going Nuggets all the way here, but I think the Spurs, with that experience, keep it close. All right, Nathan's also saying he thinks this is the best series in the playoffs. You might be right. I think it might be Portland OKC, but you might be right. This might be the best one so far. David is also saying the Spurs might bore Denver to death. He wouldn't rule Pop and his guys out. One thing's for sure, I think Pop's going to have something interesting planned for him. The question is going to be, can Denver kind of adjust to that? I think, again, I just think there's too much firepower on the Nuggets to sit there and bet on them. But maybe Popovich is that X factor. Maybe he's the guy that turns it around. He's done it with veterans before. He's done it, experiences won out before, so I can't wait to see this series again. This is one of the ones I'm watching most closely. Brian says he can't go against the Spurs. I don't blame you for that. Again, history has shown that the experienced team usually does pretty well. And Sharif says the Spurs beat the Warriors 3-1 in the season. It's interesting, but like you said, it's in the season. I don't think the Warriors were really that concerned about who they were playing during the regular season. I think we're going to see a different Warriors team now that the playoffs have started. I can't wait to see what happens, though. I mean, I think the Warriors turn it on, but maybe they sleepwalk through the first couple rounds of the playoffs and get surprised. At this point, has anyone taken the Warriors not to make the finals for the West? I think I am going to take them to make the finals in the West. We'll talk about the next couple rounds later when we actually see how it shakes out. But guys, it's been a great show. I'm glad you stuck around with me. Hopefully we get Drew back on Monday to do some mock draft for the NFL. We're going to do our final mock draft. We're going to do 2 rounds. We're going to talk about everybody you need to be focused on the first couple days of the draft process. I appreciate you hanging with me. It's been a fun show. I appreciate all the comments. We had 146 of them, so I love to see you guys talking basketball with me. I love to see you bouncing back, talking football as well. Great show. I appreciate all the comments. So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. Thank you guys so much for hanging around with me, and I will see you on Monday.